right. So you were just touching on some great topics right there, Massar, which had to do a lot with what I was gonna jump right into here. So what going off of what he was talking about, like knowing your budget, right? Um, this is one of the most used rules that uh, are told to use when you're buying like your first house, and it's called the 28-36 rule. So basically what this is like a ratio of your income. So basically it's like a rule that states that no more of 28% of your total income should go to things that are deal with the house. So if it's over 28%, anything that goes to the house, such as the mortgage, the bills, the lights, like anything that has to do with your house, it shouldn't go over 28% of your total income. All right. Now, that may have to reduce because the 36% part of the rule says that your total debt should not exceed 36% of your total income. So that means like your car, if you have a car note, if you have a cell phone bill, if you have all these different things, it should not exceed over 36% of the total income that you have. So that's known as the 28-36 rule. All right. He was also talking about other things that going into buying a house, and things that people don't realize is that there's certain things that you can't put on the loan. There's certain things like closing costs. You could add that on top of your total loan and pay it on your mortgage. However, there are things such as like inspection that has to come out of pocket. So you'll have to pay an inspector either with I hope you don't use a credit card, but hopefully you have the cash saved and you pay with cash, and you get that knocked out. That could range anywhere from 150 to maybe 375, depending on where you are, like where your area is. Another thing is something called earnest money. So this is something that's usually between $500 and $1,000, and this is something that is not for good. They're not going to keep this for good, but you give this to the owner via your real estate agent, and they put this into an account. So basically, this means if you were to pull out at any time before you signed, they would keep this money, and it's just like a security for them. So they didn't completely waste their time waiting on you. And this is called as earnest money deposit. Um, does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah. So now going back to the 28-36 rule, there's actually a calculator. I have it up here. There's actually a calculator. This one's in yen, but basically it's broken up into two parts, which is the front end ratio, the 28%, and then the back end ratio was a 36%. So what I did was I went on the military pay charts, and I E4. This is over 2 years, so 2378. So I put that in here, which this is going to be off because it's on a yen format, but this is just an example. So your income is 2378, and let's say you were paying 800 for your housing costs. Already on the front end ratio, you're see that you're at 33.64. That doesn't even include your other debts. For other debts, I put $500. So this even gives you a warning here that says, watch out, your front end ratio is 33.64%, exceeds the maximum 28%. And it doesn't have to be this is just the tool to help you. You know what I mean? This is not the rule that you have to follow this. This is just to keep you safe. And basically you're not spending, going over budget and find yourself over water. Because something that's a positive, like a house, I'm sure in his experience, I'm sure Juan in his life has seen some Marines go underwater, or some maybe of his friends go underwater. I know I have. Something positive can turn into something negative real quick just because you didn't do your due diligence. Some people get overzealous and they jump into something without doing the proper research. And the same thing with the stock market. Some people go in there and they're like, I need to get in here. You know, they see that lately the stock market has been going up, and they get the FOMO that we talked about, the fear of missing out. And they dive in there and they feel like, oh, no, I got to get in there. So That's since the rest of the crew isn't here, that's the only portion that I'm going to dedicate to real estate, unless you have some questions for him or myself, because he's been a homeowner as well. So, kid, if you have some questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them for you. If not, we'll move on.
I guess one question I'll ask is like maybe like what's the biggest lesson you learned, or like maybe like biggest mistake or something along those lines.
Well, that's great, Mass. What do you have, Juan?
Um, I would say the biggest mistake or things I regret when I bought my house, was taken from my TSP. Like he said, instead of putting the closing costs in my part of my fee, I ended up taking out a loan through through TSP to pay off that, and do my earnest money and all that. So I took about $5,500 from my TSP to cover that. Even though you're paying yourself back, I wish I just had the money. I wish I had the money saved and ready to deposit or cash on hand to pay it off. I would say be against putting it on top of your mortgage, because that's $5,000 you're going to add. Just saying, if it's $5,000 you're going to add to your loan, and with the interest long term, that $5,000 long term interest could be $8,000 more. You know what I mean? So other than that, I think that would be the only regret, is that if you're thinking about saving, buying a house, start saving now for the closing costs or the escrow, those fees that come with buying a house, and you just pay it right off the bat, and you don't have to worry about taking out a loan from TSP or putting on top of your mortgage. That's just something I learned. What I'll add too is, like, even though this is a formula designed for you, it can be feasible for you, kid, without the BH and all of that. That means the things to make the house comfy, furniture, stuff like that. You might just go without it, and live off of cardboard boxes, or make your own little chairs and stuff, or steal chairs from somewhere, and eat ramen noodles for a long time, 3 or 4 years before you get yourself settled. All right. I mean, it is feasible. It's going to require a lot of sacrifice on you if you want to make that happen. That means you're going to live, like saying, paycheck to paycheck, and living off ramen noodles and tuna cans for a long time. So again, but we don't want you to do that. So I'm not saying, hey, Master Hart told me I can do it, but I got to live off ramen noodles and tuna cans. But again, if you're dedicated enough, it is possible, but I won't recommend it. But buying a house, like I said, there's a lot. You make sure you just do your research, right? And maybe something you can look at is houses that are going under foreclosures. Those are the ones that people that got themselves involved, couldn't make the payments, and now the bank took the house back, and the bank is just trying to sell to get their money back, and so you might get a better deal that way. Now the house may be in shambles and wreck, because a lot of times these houses that are foreclosed are occupied by people or individuals that don't care. So you might walk in a house with like 300 pizza boxes stacked up to the roof because they didn't bother to clean it up. So it's going to be your responsibility to clean it up. So those are other options too, to buy a house. So you clean it up, you turn it, then you resell it, you might get more back. So those are options you can look at as well.
So
Thank you, Master.
the next conference we have, that's going to be the topic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the next conference, that'll be the topic. It'll be foreclosures, like he mentioned, and also short sales. So I'll go into depth on the both different types, because he is right. There is a lot of opportunity out there with those. However, just with opportunity, there's also a lot of heartbreak, because if you're trying to rent it out, in order to rent legally through the government, like, there has to be a certain standard that needs to be met of cleanliness, of like everything needs to be up to standard. And in a lot of foreclosures, some people foreclose and they get bitter, and they end up pulling wires out of the walls or making holes, and like they destroy houses just so somebody else won't benefit off of their loss. So there is a lot of good deals out there, but there's also a lot of bad ones. So if you are going to buy a foreclosure, I would definitely dig in there and go and look at it and have a thoroughly inspected. With short sales, just know that it's gonna longer wait. Short sales is a way longer wait than it is for a foreclosure. My first house was a short sale, and it took me about 6 months to finally close on it. Mine was a little bit longer just because the previous owner had two mortgages on it. So two banks needed to approve on that loan, that transfer. But my biggest regret, my biggest mistake that I've made in owning a house was when I rented it. I decided to go without a property manager, and I rented it on my own, and that bit me in the ass the first time, because they leave, and especially being in the military, when you're in a different state, that tenant leaves and there's no legal document binding them to pay you anything back, or there's nothing legal there, you know. So what I had to end up doing was, my father, luckily he met me in Virginia. I drove to North Carolina, and from New York he drove to Virginia, and like my father like painted literally all three floors in one weekend. Like we went to Home Depot. He painted all three floors. He like he YouTubed how to fix toilets, and he was fixing toilets and like doing different things. Because when I did go to a property manager, they inspected the house, and they said, in order to make this house rentable, these are the things you need to fix. And they gave me a total, and it was like $7,900 to fix all these things. And I showed that to my dad, and my dad was like, hell no, we're going to go do that ourselves. And by doing it ourselves, it ended up being like $700 to get all those things fixed. And that's a big difference, you know. We literally didn't sleep. Like I can't even say I did a lot. Like my dad did a lot. I paid for all the materials, and my dad did a lot. My wife's yelling at me because she was there as well. She was over there cleaning and cooking and doing stuff. But yeah, man, that was my biggest regret. From now, both of my houses, they both have property managers. And when you think about what they do for you, the one in Virginia is 10% of my rent, and the one in North Carolina is 8% of my rent. And it's totally worth it. It's totally worth it to do it. They do all the hard work. They advertise my house for me. They show my house. Currently, my house in North Carolina, there was a warrant officer that lived there. He moved out because he offered to buy my house, and I didn't want to sell it. So he did it the proper way. You know, his lease was up, and he moved out. He gave the proper warning, and already I have like 3 people who are, you know, trying to move into the house, and that wouldn't be possible with me in Japan. You know, so I have a property manager in North Carolina that handles it, and I recommend that. I recommend you pay the little bit to gain a lot. So the next topic is going to be what I was discussing with Juan earlier.
Hey, sir.
Yeah.
Hey, sir, real quick. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That'll be another kid. That'll be another regret.
Yeah.
That would be another regret that I sold my house because I was afraid to rent it out because I've heard so many horror stories and heard so many things that I was just like, and being coming here to Japan, that was just something I was like, we didn't want to deal with. And so we chose to sell, you know. But now that I think about it and knowing that, you know, George there has 2 houses he's renting out and he's been a success. Yeah, he had a hiccup the first time, but he learned from it. And, you know, now he has 2 properties that if he chooses to sell, I guarantee you his profits will be like triple, maybe quadruple, you know, since he first started. So again, that'll be another regret that I've had when I bought a house. It's not maybe seeking advice about rental property. I just, you know, just base it off what I've heard, you know. And again, that's just something I'm going to learn down the road as well.
Yeah. So a big reason my wife, when we first were about to get married, like she was like, you need to sell that house in Virginia because I told you about the headache, you know. And then my dad was like, listen, you have this account. It's basically a bank. That house is a bank account that somebody else is putting money into every month. And where am I going to have a bank account that gives me 100% interest that somebody else is putting money into it and building interest on it, you know? So they're paying this mortgage down for me. And whenever I do want to sell, like he said, like that's going to be at least 80% profit because somebody, not me, put into this house. They put 80% of whatever they paid, you know. The house in North Carolina, I owe 59,000. And I think out of pocket, I've probably come out, you know, 12,000, and the rest has been all tenants that have paid it down, you know. Um, and the property manager, they every year they tell you this is what you should rent it at. We feel this is what everybody else is renting it at. Because of inflation, rents go up, and they're like, you know, 2 years ago I was charging $1,250. Now I'm charging $1,375 because of inflation. You know, this year they said 1,600, but because of coronavirus, I said, you know what, we're gonna keep it at 1375. The tenant asked if we could, and they've been there for 4 years. They've been great. They've never missed a payment. So, you know, I was like, you know what, hell yeah, we'll keep it at 1375. It's still great for me. It's still like $400 more than my mortgage is, and they were great, and it's like my way of paying them back. You know, that $1,200 in a year that I didn't get. The fact that they didn't move out, the fact they want to stay, it meant a lot. So I kind of, it's like paying them back for paying me, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So Matt's he made a lot of gains, and I asked him today about if he had a Roth IRA, and this got me into a conversation with my friend Diego as well when we were working out today, and he totally misunderstood what a Roth IRA was. So he thought it was like the TSP, where you would just pick an account like the G fund or the E fund, and you go and you pick a fund, and that's not how it works on this app. Hopefully it loads. So I'm going to show you guys full disclosure. So this is my regular account. This is the first one I ever built, the first portfolio I ever built. And like I told him, I'm going to make a video soon, which is my biggest regrets. And my biggest regrets was starting here, because I started in this account, which is my regular brokerage account. I later on decided that I wanted to start a portfolio in a Roth IRA. And let me get over here. So give me a second.
Are you looking for the Roth account?
Yeah. I don't use
at individual on the top right. Individual. I think if you hit that drop down box, it'll show all your portfolios.
Which one? Because I use the app. I can't. Oh, I couldn't see it because of the screens were blocking your two faces over here were blocking my view. All right, so this is the Roth IRA I currently have, and this was to knock out misconceptions. So the Roth IRA, you can have individual stocks in your Roth IRA. That's what I decided to do through M1 Finance. Was for free. You start this account, and the stipulations through here are the government only allows you to put 6,000 a year. You are good to put 6,000 until the year. Let me put this whiteboard up. So this is the current amount that you're allowed to put every year. So total 6,000. You can contribute 6,000 until July 2020 for 2019. So this is your 2019 contribution. The reason it's until July 20th, it's actually July 15th. The reason it's until July 15th is because because of this whole virus situation, the pandemic, the tax season was moved from April 15th deadline to July 15th deadline. And being that this is a tax account, the contribution date was moved until July 15th of 2020.
Normally it will be April 15th then, right?
It's normally April 15th, yes. So next year, unless something changes again, to contribute for 2020, you will have until, all right, so 2020 contribution, April 15, 21. You have until April 15, 2021 to contribute until 2020 contribution. All right. So these are, so funding. You can pull out whatever you've put in at any time with no fee. So if something went wrong and you needed to pull out the 6,000 that you contributed, you can pull that 6,000 out at any time. Gains, you have to wait 5 years before you can pull out your gains. And Juan, that's why I asked you earlier what your time horizon was, because if you have just a 2 to 3 year time, then I didn't want to tell you about this because it's too short. But if you could extend that a little bit, I think it's worth it because of the tax implications. So the Roth is a contribution made is a contribution that's made up of after-tax dollars. So this has nothing to do with your MyPay, with your bank account, with anything like that. You don't have to, it doesn't come out automatically. You pay to this as you feel the need to. You don't have to do 6,000. That's not a minimum, that's the maximum. And you contribute this with money from your paychecks that you've already been taxed on. So once so once you put that money in here, you will never be taxed on this or any gains that you've made throughout your whole, lifetime of this Roth IRA. And that's, once I saw that, I was like, wow, we're basically stealing money from the government. Like, that's what it feels like, legally.
So correct me if I'm wrong, sir. So if I buy a share and I invest it through the Roth IRA, and I buy, let's say, $1,000 shares in Apple, I buy 100 shares in Apple for $5 a share,
Yeah.
$500, right? So let's say Apple $5 share rises up to $20 a share. Now I've gained $2,000. And I leave it alone for 5 years. In 5 years, if I decide to take out my money I invested plus the gains, it's tax free.
You won't be taxed on it. You'll receive a tax document every year from this app or whatever app you choose to take this from, or if you want to do it through a bank. The reason I went through here is that you can choose your own individual stocks. Like if you go through Navy Fed, they're going to give you the same thing that the TSP does. For those who don't know, the TSP is the Thrift Savings Plan, and the Thrift Savings Plan is comprised of mutual funds that you can invest in. There's some that are riskier, which means they're comprised more of stocks, and the ones that are less riskier are comprised of a percentage of bonds, a percentage of gold. That's just an example. But when you contribute into this, it's made up of after-tax dollars, so you won't get taxed. M1 Finance also has a traditional, and the way that would work is it would pull money straight from your MyPay or your employer before you were taxed, and it would work but the difference between that is when you pulled out the money, then you would be taxed at whatever your current tax rate is. Does that make sense?
It does, sir.
All right. So the last thing is I opened up a new box. So the minimum to begin is a $500 deposit. And again, you don't have to use this at all. They don't rush you to use it. So I'll give you an example. Let me share the screen again. All right. So when you deposit it, the money's going to pop up in your account and you're going to see your balance and all that. And you don't have to use it at all. You could just sit there. My current cash balance is $43 on here. But you don't have to use, let's say you deposited this year and next year, you deposited 12,000 because you wanted to knock it out. You could use 500 one day, you could use $10 one day, you could use whatever, and you don't have to use it all at one time. The July 15th deadline is just to have that money insert into this account. After that, it's on you to buy whatever you buy. One thing that I did with this account was I put my real estate investment trust into this account because real estate investment trusts are taxed at your regular tax rate. So we have 10 minutes left. So whatever your current tax rate is, that's when you'll be taxed on the dividends or regular gains from a real estate investment trust. And when you have a, like this one, for example, let me see. So when I receive the dividends for this one, which I believe it'll be in June 9th, can you turn that off? When I believe it'll be on June 9th, those will all be, tax free. I won't have to ever pay tax on them. And the dividend percentage on this real estate investment trust is 43.74, which when you compare that to a bank, let's say you had your money in a money market account, the highest on those that we've seen is about 3.5%. So now you have this stock, which is giving you a dividend yield of 43.74%. Like, that's a big deal.
Is that quarterly or annually, sir?
So you're giving this quarterly. However, one thing I told them before is that when it's also broken up into quarters. So in order to get the full 43.74, it's based on a year, but you're gonna receive it quarterly. So you're gonna get a quarter of this 43.74 every quarter. So in order to get the full value, you need to have at least 4 shares to get 43.74. And for every 4 shares you have, you'll receive it again and again and again. However, when I think I talked to you about it before, Juan, when I first were talking about Robinhood and talking about all that, the reason I went through this first was because they allowed you to have fractional shares. So you didn't have to have, for example, let's go to, I do this all the time, but it's your first time here. So so Amazon stock. So as you know, like when you have if you want to buy just one share of Amazon, you need to have 2,483. And up till a few months ago on Robinhood, you needed to have the full 2,483 in order to buy a share. I think that's changed recently with some stipulations.
It has.
But when I first started investing, they didn't have that yet. So I went with M1 Finance because they had, it was the same thing, free. You don't have to pay for your trades. And the way they broke it up into like a pie, that's the way they do it. They break it up into pies. That's what like sold me on it. And then when I saw they had the Roth, I did my research on it and I'm like, wow, I should have started with this. So I ended up having to sell like stocks like Facebook or Zoom. Zoom I bought, I think it was like a 107 when I first bought it. And then I sold it at 140, which, I would have kept it. I'm a long-term investor. So I don't really want to buy and sell. The reason I was selling because I wanted to transfer that capital into this account, my Roth IRA. But if I would have held it like I wanted to originally, now I think Zoom is at like 209 today, so it kind of lost some, but I think in the long run, because this is a non-taxable account, it's going to pay off itself. That's the way I like to look at it. So do you have any questions, Juan?
No, again, after we talked and you actually talked to me about, the money going to Ross, my buddy, and I were talking in the gym today via Messenger, my buddy Amy. And he uses a American Trade portfolio to do what he does. So again, Robinhood is the beginning. Maybe once I see some positives, even though right now I'm doing real good. I'm waiting. I guess I got a goal to set. I have a set goal where I say, hey, this is what I want to make. Once I make it, I'm going to cash out, and I want to move that money into something to invest. For me, it'd be probably putting some money into like a college Roth IRA for my girls, so that when 5 years from now, when they get to college, they have money to use. And that's what I'm looking for. It's not for me to be a millionaire, the next Warren Buffett. It's just for me to get advanced. So, I got girls that got to go to school, you know. So what the Warren officer has here, Chief Warren has here, like, you know, these are great opportunity, kid, for you to advance in what you're doing. Robin Hood is just the beginning. It's a stepping stone. And it's a stepping stone for me because, you know, now that I see what he's done, and my buddy Ing kind of told me the similar thing about what he does, I'm just like, you know, take advantage, you know, and, you know, look into this stuff. And I won't be surprised within a month, I'll probably open an account at, either with this one or with American Trade, just so I can start putting into money into our Roth, just so I can be set myself and also for my kids as well. So,
well, and
very good information.
in the chat that we started, I started it because I was like I told Kid, it actually is the inception of it was we were in building 1050 and I had a bunch of Marines. I think you walked in there as well. I had a bunch of Marines in there, and it's like I was surprised how much they didn't know. I know I didn't know a lot, but they really didn't know a lot. So I started this whole thing, and Kid knows, like, I was just in there and I'm like, you know what? I want to be a source of knowledge, and I want to give these people something that I didn't have, that Juan didn't have when we were growing up. He made a joke earlier that he sucked as a gunnery sergeant for me because he was my gunnery sergeant when I was a Lance Corporal, and he didn't teach me none of this stuff, but, you know, obviously he didn't know it either, you know? So I'm trying to set you guys up for the most success. And like I told him, sometimes you and Benson are like, we're going to catch up to you, but you guys are already 10 years ahead of me. You know, you guys are,
yes.
you guys are, when you guys get to 35, if you stay with it, you guys are, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you're at least, you know, $400,000 or $500,000 deep, you know?
Oh no, it's gonna be way more than that.
Well,
a couple million by then.
Well, good.
And that's good, positive attitude. You know, like I said, you're 10 years ahead of me. Him, you're like 20 years ahead of me. You know, but like he said, you know, if I were to, we were talking earlier, and we're just like, one of the key things I said is like, you know, I wish, you know, yeah, I failed you as an extra gunning, but at the same time, it's like, I wish I had gunner sergeant and warrant officers or officers that was constantly push the information like we do to you guys, you know. And when I get out there and put my hat on, you know, just saying, hey, invest in this and that, it's because, you know what? Like I told all of you, it's like I have an investment. My son's a Marine too, and I'm constantly texting him like, hey, you're looking at this, you're looking at this. Hey, this is what I'm looking at right now. I might buy this stock. So he's kind of following my lead, so he's doing good just based off what I tell him. So all the time I'm thinking like, why am I just doing that for my son when all you and my little brothers and sisters, I should provide the same information to you all. So that's why I do what I do, you know. And again, my advice and you know, I'm there for you all. If you guys ever want to talk and say, hey, top, you know, what are you investing in? You know, can I get a glance at your portfolio? I'll show it to you. And I'll show you what I'm putting my money in. That way you have an idea. But again, I'm not going to say that's what you should do, because that's where you should put your money in. It's just like, this is what I'm doing because I'm taking the risk as well.
Yeah, it's just feeding off of each other and learning from each other. We have 1 minute and 40 seconds left. Any closing remarks? A minute, 30 seconds.
For me, right now, yeah. So my situation right now is I'm trying to. So every month to every other month, I like redo my budget, or I just look at it, see what I got to change, see how I've been doing. I say right now I'm trying to figure out like how. So say my goal is to save $1,000 each paycheck, right? Out of that $1,000, where am I going to put every dollar of it? So I'm trying to figure out like what percentage I'm putting into an emergency fund, what percentage is going in my Roth IRA that I got, and then my regular portfolio, and then what percentage is going towards my future first rental property. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, it's easy for me to save money, but I'm just trying to figure out where exactly every dollar should go.
It's going to be a work on progress. Yeah.
If you come sit down with me, like I said, we put all that in a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet that exactly break down everything you want to do, and they'll give you an idea of what your spending ratio is, your debt ratio is, and it gives you an idea and what to look forward to. And like, hey, at the end of the day, every pay period, you have this excess amount of money, and the excess money, you can put it in what you're talking about, and then whatever's left over, you can put that into some type of, your Robinhood to invest.
It's going to shut off.
So again,
It's going to shut off shortly. But
okay, so